It doesn't look like it, but John Wick's been through hell 3 times in a very short time span. From what we can tell, all 3 movies take place within the same month, but Chapter 4 has a chance to shake things up. In this video, we'll explain why Chapter 4 can benefit from a time jump, and later, we're taking a nostalgia trip through the 10 best action sequences in the John Wick franchise. First up, a time jump between Parabellum and Chapter 4 makes canonical sense. The most obvious trend in the John Wick movies is an unbroken flow of events. The ending of John Wick 1 led immediately into Chapter 2, and Parabellum picked up directly where Chapter 2 left off. So Wick's journey from New York to Rome to Morocco and all the way back took roughly 3 weeks, give or take a few days. There's nothing wrong with that, but we're hoping Chapter 4 does things differently. At the end of Parabellum, John falls from a skyscraper and is taken to the Bowery King, who himself is recovering from his 7 cuts. Naturally, the two of them need to recover before they can take on the High Table, and since their plan is high risk, high reward, they'll need more than a few weeks' time to prepare. Thankfully, the official trailer gave us some answers. We see the 2 characters fully healed and ready to take on the High Table, and we're glad John's going to be at full strength this time, because everyone agrees that he's been fighting the world with one hand tied behind his back. Not to mention, the constant running will eventually take him down. It's pretty obvious that while John will stop at nothing to reach his goals, he can't outrun fatigue. Unfortunately, he's still a human being, and willpower will only get him so far. If Chapter 4 began right where 3 left off, and the franchise continued this trend, then that'd spell trouble for the entire storyline. How long can someone run before their own body gives up on them? He could have the will of Hercules, but he'll die of exhaustion long before any assassins get to him. So, if Chapter 4 sets up a new story structure, that not only mixes things up, it also leads to bigger and more epic moments. If he's at full strength at the start of every chapter, then he's gonna be more creative when his enemies start piling up. If you keep him at 25 HP throughout all the movies, then he's just gonna be exhausted the entire time. We love his tenacity, and we love how he comes out on top every single time despite the odds, but for a franchise of this scale, it's not a very sustainable storytelling format. Finally, the High Table thread is serious and may continue in Chapter 5. From what we know so far, director Chad Stahelski promised audiences that Chapter 4 will have an emotional payoff and that it'll make Wick suffer more than ever. This reminds us of an interesting Reddit theory that was making rounds earlier. We think it's part of the reason why time jumps are necessary for telling John Wick's story. So, the theory says that the 5 chapters in the John Wick franchise represent the 5 stages of grief. At first, it seems like a long shot, but then it starts to make sense. The first 3 movies represent denial, anger, and bargaining. Maybe that's why they take place over such a short period. Then comes depression, and judging by Stahelski's comments and the incredibly high risk John and the Bowery King are taking, this is what the entire series has been building towards. If depression's the theme of Chapter 4, then wouldn't it make sense that it'll take place a while after Parabellum? Now that he's bargained and forfeited his life with the High Table, depression will probably set in, leading to acceptance in the 5th film. Acceptance takes a long time too, so if we're right about this, then the time jump between Chapters 4 and 5 will be even longer. Only time will tell though. But while we're waiting for John Wick 4, why not do a throwback of the franchise's greatest action sequences? Starting with number 10, the home invasion. Right before this scene, Viggo tells his son about Wick's history and how he managed to kill 3 men with a pencil. What comes next is the perfect example of show, don't tell. Several assassins visit John's home, but they're out of their depth. The fact that John has home field advantage just makes this scene even more badass. He knows exactly how to duck and weave through his house to shoot the intruders down, and it ends with a knife fight that's as intense as it's satisfying. At number 9, John escapes through the catacombs. Santino D'Antonio sends John to kill his sister Gianna, and after he's done, he needs to escape from a concert through the dark catacombs. He evades Cassian, Gianna's personal guard, but has to deal with dozens of Santino's men who are coming for his head. But Wick's more than prepared. Before arriving on the scene, he anticipates a skirmish through the catacombs and cleverly hides weapons in a hole. And as he comes running through the narrow passageways, he shows off his skills with every weapon imaginable, and he's able to take down an entire platoon single-handedly, cementing his legendary status in our minds. For number 8, the stable brawl. In the first 15 minutes of Chapter 3, Wick is excommunicado and on the run. He gets chased into a horse stable, and in typical John Wick fashion, he gets really creative. 3 guys come at him with guns, and he fights them off individually by getting a horse to brutally kick them in the face. The scene ends with John riding a horse and shooting down 2 other guys, chasing him on motorbikes. We got our money's worth right there. Next is number 7. It's Wick versus Cassian. Even though Wick evades Cassian in the catacombs of Rome, he isn't able to do it entirely. Cassian catches up to him immediately after, and the two get into an intense fight on the streets of Italy. For a second, it looks like Wick has finally met his match. Cassian's fast and ruthless and keeps up with him. They eventually fall down several flights of stairs and end up crashing through the windows of the Continental, where they're forced to stop by the house rules. At number 6, it's the motorbike sword fight. When you you put motorbikes and swords in the same scene, you're about to get something epic, and Chapter 3 pulls it off with flying colors. On his way to the Continental, Wick gets attacked by Zero and his group of assassins, all while traveling at high speeds. He doesn't have a sword initially, but that's not an issue. He just borrows someone else's and ends up killing most of them before the scene is over. Now, we know there's a lot of CGI and it's noticeable, but it doesn't distract you from how epic the chase is. Coming in at number 5, Reflections of the Soul from Chapter 2. Near the end of Chapter 2, Wick finds himself in a Hall of Mirror exhibit while hunting Santino. There isn't much gunplay in this sequence, but it's very reminiscent of Enter the Dragon. The atmosphere is tense, and Santino's guards constantly question which image of John is the real one, and he takes them down one by one. The scene ends in a one-sided fight with Ruby Rose's character, which makes it one of the best in the series. Up next at number 4 is the knife shop fight. In the opening sequence of Chapter 3, Wick finds himself surrounded by assassins in an old knife shop, and it only makes sense that they use every kind of knife available. Not only does that scene prove he's a master knife thrower, but it's also shown very realistically, with near misses and bad throws. And John ends the fight with a brutal axe throw that buries itself in a man's skull. At number 3, it's the escape from Casablanca. You mess with Halle Berry's dogs, you'd better be ready to get your crotch bit. After things go wrong in Casablanca, Wick and Sophia fight their way out of the fortress, and Sophia's German shepherds help them do it. The scene has intense long takes, complex choreography, and an extremely satisfying payoff. In second place is the nightclub shootout. Going back to the first movie, the nightclub shootout has to be one of the most iconic action sequences in modern times. After a tip-off that Vigo's son is at the Red Circle nightclub, Wick goes in guns blazing, and what follows is a savage gunfight that proves what a beast he truly is. This scene proved that his willpower knows no bounds. Finally, number 1, Wick and Sharon versus the High Table's army. The final action sequence in Chapter 3 takes the cake, and we loved how it gave Charon, a minor supporting character, a lot to do during the entire scene. The Continental comes under attack from the High Table, which sends its top armed forces to kill Wick, Winston, and anyone who stands in their way. But Winston has a bunker full of awesome weapons and armor-piercing rounds, so John and Sharon gear up, and we get an eye-watering war between a legendary assassin and the High Table's best man. And that's a wrap, folks. Thanks for watching. So, do you think there should be a long time jump between Parabellum and Chapter 4? And what's your favorite action sequence from all 3 movies so far? Tell us down below. As always, be sure to hit like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more John Wick content. We'll see you in the next one.